Once your project has been cut out, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take these sharp edges right here. Again, when we had the project resting flat and we cut out the outlines, we're going to take these sharp edges and we're going to round them over to give your project a little bit more of a contour to it instead of looking like it came off of a machine. So I'm about to show you how we're going to do this edge by doing what we call a three-step technique. So the first thing I want to show you is the Dremel that you'll be using. It's this electric Dremel. It plugs into the outlets on the wall. When you're using these Dremels, it has a sanding drum on the very tip here, a rounded sanding drum. And when we turn this Dremel on, the on-off switch is located right here in the front, this blue switch. We're going to turn it on to setting number 10 all the way on. And you'll see a vent right here and a vent on this side. There's a small fan in there that keeps the motor cool. So when you're turning the Dremel on, when you turn it on, be sure to hold the Dremel with both hands and obviously make sure you have your safety glasses on. Your safety check must be performed and then you can turn the power on. Hold it with both hands once the power is turned on. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to feel air blowing out of one of the two vents. We want to position the Dremel so that the air is blowing away from your face as you're rounding over your edges. Then the other thing you want to remember is this process will be different from carving. When you held the Dremel to carve, you held it down here like a pencil. When you're rounding over edges, we're going to place your hand on top of the Dremel. With it resting on top, that gives you more control of the Dremel as you're doing the rounding technique, which is opposed to the carving technique. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn this on and we're going to show you how to get a rounded edge. So I'll tell you while the machine's turned off. What we're going to do is we're going to hold your project about a 45-degree angle. Similar to what we did when we were sanding that excess tissue paper off on your airplanes. Hold your woodworking project at a 45-degree angle and we're going to take the Dremel bit and we're just going to go right along the side here, and we're not rounding it yet, we're just going to give it a flat edge. So we're going to have a surface on top here, a flat edge from the Dremel, and we have the thickness surface right here. Once we get that consistently going around the entire outside edge, then we can go ahead and start working with sandpaper to round it over. Before I turn the Dremel on again, I wanted to go over some of the smaller areas here. These larger areas, it's okay to run the Dremel all the way across the edges, but when you get in these hard to reach spots here, sometimes it's how you position the piece of wood. You can work right in here and position it going one direction, and then we move the piece of wood. So before you even make contact with your Dremel, always make sure you're rounding this, holding the machine comfortably, and you want to go over your edges according to how the shape is defined. In a small area like this one, I don't want to go back and forth because then I'll lose that shape there. So in this case, what I would do is just take the Dremel and just lightly tap it on the edge, and that will get us started for our rounding technique. Down in these areas here, again, we can't go back and forth with the Dremel, so in this case this would again be where you tap it on the edges. So when I get ready to turn this on, I have my safety glasses on. I'm going to turn it on holding it with both hands. I find the vent which is blowing the air out of this raised side right here, so I'm going to position that away from my face. Take the project, we look at it from the start, you can see a sharp edge on there. Hold it at a 45-degree angle, and then take the Dremel and go right along that edge. What I've now done is I've made that edge. I'm going to continue working my way around. As you can see, I now have the surface, the side, and the thickness. And now I can continue working around. We'll show you in a smaller area here how to take that Dremel. And I'm just going to go back and forth this way. And you don't want to press too hard with your Dremel, because if you press too hard with the Dremel bit on the piece of wood, it's going to create friction, which will then burn the piece of wood. So as I go around, as you can see, I'm starting to get a rounded edge over there. So now we're going to turn this off. Wait till the Dremel comes to a complete stop before you set it down. we're going to take that edge now that we made, and before you do this, you make sure that you've gone around the entire outside edge of your project, not just one spot. You'll go back to your seat and you're going to need a piece of sandpaper. We're going to take that sandpaper, similar to what we did with our airplanes, fold it into fourths, and then we're going to sand with the edge, and this is the three-step technique. With step 1, we have this surface here. Step 2, we made another surface with a Dremel. Step 3, we had our thickness here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sandpaper and I'm going to sand from step 1, slowly rotate it to step 2, the project, rotate the project to step 3, back to 2 and back to 1, and then we'll see our curves develop. So as I begin sanding, I'm pressing down, slowly rotate the project to surface 2, and then surface 3, back to surface 2, and surface 1. So you do that for a little bit, and you can start to see that rounding technique. That goes around the entire edge that way. So be sure when you're sanding with your project either on the table. If you need to do small areas like this, I recommend resting it on the table, and then what we can do is take the sandpaper, curve it, and then sand down inside those areas there and do the same thing. We can round the sand, move the sandpaper instead of the project. So what we're looking for here now is to get a nice consistent curve going around the entire project. So when we have that nice consistent curve, you'll be ready to cut out your segments. And we're going to follow the same steps with the segments. Is once all of your pieces have been cut out, then we're going to go ahead and round over each individual piece.